Welcome to another sports and mental health conversation. I am Will Driscoll, the Executive Director at the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and the Hall, in partnership with the Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters and countless other stakeholders in youth and collegiate athletics, brings you this conversation as part of the Youth Sports Mental Health and Wellness Alliance. The Alliance aims to decrease the stigma around mental health and wellness and also provide resources to help create positive sports experiences. Joining us today to give his perspective and insight on this important topic is Michael Kennedy. Michael is an active duty naval personnel officer right now. Michael has also had his hands in sports at multiple levels on the officiating side. He is an active football official with the American Athletic Conference in NCAA Division-I. He will also be joining the UFL this spring as a non-field official, and he also serves as a director of training for the Southeastern Football Officials Association, supporting high school and middle school football programs in Hampton Roads. Michael, I think I got all of that correct, but I want to thank you for taking some time to join us today.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. And yes, I think everything's correct on that intro there. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, we're always happy to have these conversations. We love hearing from multiple stakeholders that kind of represent all facets of youth and collegiate sports. But the official side is one that we really haven't tapped into since we started doing these conversations about 16 months ago. So you are obviously a very important part of the sports landscape, the sports ecosystem. What can stakeholders do to support officials and their goal for positive mental health?
Well, for one, referees, right? We're obviously charged with being responsible for upholding the integrity of the game, right? So how I look at our job as referees, right? We have that frontline, unbiased perspective of what's really going on in the field, right? So with that, I feel that we create a vital role in creating that positive and healthy sports environment for our youth athletes, right? So things like acts of unsportsmanlike behaviors, out of control coaches, even players, right? They deserve to be handled in accordance with the rules. Whereas we have a saying as officials, right? What you permit, you promote. So obviously creating that healthy sports environment goes along with that. Now, by no means am I saying that sports officials are the only ones that have that responsibility, right? It certainly falls on coaches, game administration, and especially the parents as well, right? Those in the stands watching the games. We all have an obligation together to work together to create that positive, healthy environment for these young athletes. So we can start prioritizing that mental health on the field. It's only going to improve their own experiences as children, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that has been extremely encouraging since the alliance was formed back in May of 2022 is the new connections. Like us, we were connected within the last month through somebody that came to the alliance meeting and they saw value in the overall program. But why is the topic of mental health in sports important to you personally?
Well, for one, I have three children of my own, three boys. One's 13. I have two 9-year-old twin boys. All three are playing different sports, of course, right? They can't all play the same one. So something like youth sports, mental health, and wellness just definitely applies to my own life, let alone not even on the officiating side where I get to see that on the weekends in other people's lives with parents and coaches and the kids themselves out there. And there's no surprise that sports obviously play that role for physical, social, emotional development in young people, right? So as they kind of grow up and become our leaders in society, we want to make sure that we're doing our job as parents and leaders now in society to cultivate the next generation. And I see a lot of that happens with sports.
You have a very interesting perspective. One, you're an official, and so like I said, this is really the first conversation like this that we've had with a referee or official. But two, you're at all different levels. So as I mentioned, you work with the high school and middle school officials. You work personally on the field in NCAA Division-I and now at the professional level with the merger of the United Football League and the XFL. Are the conversations different depending on the level, or is there some consistency when it comes to sports, mental health, wellness for the officials, for the players at all of these different levels?
Well, that's a great question, Will. So I attack as an official, I try to attack each level somewhat differently because you're dealing with different type of player, right? So at the youth league, you're mostly talking with kids that are out there for the enjoyment, the passion of the sport. They're just trying to get to learn the skills that's needed, the development. So a lot of the time on the field, when I started working youth football, you talk to the players. You just, hey, good hit, good tackle. You're friendly with them, right? Like you're trying to talk to them, be positive all the time as you can with these little athletes. So because they're learning their skills. Obviously, you're not going to throw fouls on kids at 10, 11 years old that you may throw at the college level or even the professional level, right? Because it is a learning environment for them. Sometimes the parents don't understand that. Coaches don't understand that. They want us to officiate it like it would be a pro game. But unfortunately, it's not the way that you want to develop the kid growing up in that type of sport. But for the most part, as you progress, it becomes more of a business, right? So not so much at the youth level, middle school level. As you get to the high school level, now kids are trying to vie for spots, right? It's no longer playing for just getting playing time. Now you're trying to look to feeling all those constant pressure in these higher competitive sports, because mostly caused by parents and coaches. And hey, we got to get you to the next level. Hey, your time to get to the next level. So these athletes on the field, they feel more intense pressure the older they get. The kids, like I said, youth football, they're young, bouncing around, having a good time. As you get to the high school level, now you see a lot more intensity, you see a lot more pressure, you see a lot more of that pressure getting to them. And then at the college level, it's even double that, right? You have the kids that now they're worried about schoolwork and scholarships and trying to get out in the real world, because maybe guess what, football is going to end eventually. So now you got to set yourself up for a job. Some even have families at that point, right? They're already starting into their family life. So the problem is each level you see more and more pressures on the sports. And as an official, you got to understand that. As an official, you can see that and you cater things to kind of help, like I said, provide that environment that best fits the players and coaches in that level.
Well, let's talk about officials and kind of maintaining your own mental health and wellness and being positive amongst yourselves. We obviously know the external pressures that you all face on the field, whether it is from players and coaches or whether it is from the stands and fans, parents, things like that. But external pressures are sometimes tough to control. But how can you as officials avoid increasing the pressure that you put on yourselves to make sure that the game isn't remembered because of you, or rightly or wrongly? Basically, like, I guess the question I'm asking is, how can you make sure that you mitigate the pressures that you are putting on yourself so that you can kind of mitigate the external pressures that are just going to be a part of the actual job?
Well, first, Will, whether the audience out there believes it or not, we try to go into every game to be perfect. We do, and that's the pressures that we put on ourselves, because as officials, we want to be perfect. We don't want to miss a call. We don't want to have one team gain an advantage because we didn't do our job right, or we were out of position, or we were too slow to get there, right? So we go into the game even sometimes with the expectation that we will be perfect that game. Now, I've been at all levels, never worked a perfect game yet, okay? However, we do go in every game with that mindset. So you do feel that pressure, but the guys that rise, the officials that rise to the higher levels, they understand how to kick that call, throw it in the back. So if you miss the call, time to flush it. Let's move on to the next call, right? Let's move on to the next play. Keep going. And a football game, for example, is a series of 200 plays. So every play, you're refocusing, you're re-going through that play just to get to the next play. So one thing I do as part of the training program that we teach in high school and at the younger levels, right, is we teach conflict de-escalation, the conflict resolution. So that basically communication. We teach how to talk with coaches, how to talk with game administration, how to talk with players. And like I said earlier, I'm constantly trying to talk to players. It helps me give myself self-awareness. It helps my emotional intelligence. It helps the players out on the field. So if I see 3rd and 5, we're 36 seconds left in the game, I talk to myself about what situation I'm in, but I also do the same thing with the player. I'll see a good tackle. Hey, good play, 5-5. Nice catch, 1, right? I'll say, hey, way to keep the head up, 4-8. Way not to put the head down, or way to lay off them. instead of if he has an opportunity to hit an opponent unfairly, but I see him pull up, hey, way to stay off of that. Good job, right? So I'm constantly trying that positive talk out there, not only to myself, but to the players as well, too.
It's interesting in hearing that answer. You mentioned communication, you mentioned self-awareness, you mentioned emotional intelligence, and these are all part of the mental health ecosystem. Mental health by itself is kind of the overarching umbrella topic, but all of those are subtopics, and we've talked about all of that with many of the people that we've had similar conversations like this with. So it's very encouraging to hear that that's part of the training as well. How receptive, as you've gone through this training over the last few years and you're starting to see a new generation of officials come up, how receptive have they been to this kind of evolving message regarding mental health in sports?
Oh, they love it. Like, because so another part of my job in the Navy is I'm a readiness and plans officer, right? So part of my job is I optimize the organizational effectiveness through on-site inspections, focus groups, things of that nature, right? So I'm used to conducting workshops, do peer-to-peer coaching sessions. I'm used to all that to kind of build mental health and wellness in our young sailors, right? Like you mentioned before, we teach that emotional intelligence and mental performance, just hopefully to optimize the fleet to be a more resilient warfighting force. But I take that and I transition that into officiating. So when I teach the same things I'm teaching our young sailors how to get through stressful times, high tempo situations, all that, it's all things that you face as an official, especially out on the field. Some of these guys have never been exposed to it, right? So some of these officials, they've never had to go through that. So they hear how to work through that, and it helps them immediately, right? So they go home, they can work with their spouses or the significant others, their kids, right? Just how to communicate better, how to talk better. It's skills that you learn that can help you throughout life, not just out on the field once, twice, 3 times a week, however many games you get that week, right? So they've been very receptive to it. And I've had guys come back and say, this is one of the best. They look forward to coming on our Monday night training sessions, right? This is one of the best trainings I've ever had. So it definitely excites me. It makes me feel good about what I'm able to do for the community. So.
Well, and it's great to hear too that it's becoming a two-way conversation. And for many years, a lot of people said one of the barriers was people would talk about it, and the other person might listen, but they wouldn't engage in conversation about it. One, because it might have been uncomfortable, or they might not have had the knowledge that they wanted to be able to engage in conversation. But it's great to see that those two-way conversations are now happening. How do you ensure your own mental health? Speaking personally as Michael Kennedy, like as an official, prepping for your game that week, or making sure that you got all your ducks in a row. How do you ensure that you maintain a positive mental health atmosphere for yourself?
Well, first and foremost, it's the support system, right? So you have my wife she's my rock, right? So I travel a lot on the weekends. I go to different game sites across the country where I go work my games. My wife she's awesome. So she knows if I had a bad game and I'd call her afterwards, right? It was just chaotic, a whole bunch of stuff going on, right? We talk about it. Never negative, always positive, always giving me that support. Hey, look at the game film, see what happens, improve on it, and then we'll go from there, right? My kids love it, right? They'll watch Dad on TV, and they get excited about it, right? So it's the support system you have with your family and fellow officials. So what we have is I consider it a fellowship, right? The men and women that we have on our board as officials, I can call them up, talk to them, and we talk about the game. Or if they had a rough game, they'll call me up on a Friday night. Hey, listen, we just had a barn burner here. What do you think about this? This play happened to us. How would you have handled it? And so we have that support system with each other that really helps. And then of course, working out, right? You have to stay in shape to be able to put yourself in the right position to make the right call. So that goes into my job in the Navy here. You want to stay physically fit as well too, right? So constantly working out, having that great support system, being able to talk to friends about it, that helps, goes a long way with your mental health.
Yeah, that sense of community. Nobody wants to approach this issue alone, and it's great to have that sense of community to bounce ideas off of each other. And sometimes that's what it is. It's just bouncing ideas off of each other to make sure that you can improve moving forward, either whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, what have you. But we'll get you out of here on this. over the years that you've been around youth and collegiate athletics and now professional athletics, what's the biggest difference you've seen in how this topic has been approached? And then I guess it's a two-parter. What's the biggest difference you've seen in how it's approached? And two, what work still needs to be done so that we can continue making progress?
Well, Will, to be honest, when it comes to mental health and wellness in youth sports, I don't think it really was approached when I first got into this and I started seeing this. I know as a player when I was young, growing up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, playing every sport there was none of that, right? And then as my kids first were introduced into youth sports, there never really was any discussions of people talking about that, right? But now you're seeing a lot more professional players come out talking about mental health. I think I saw a statistic that 35% of elite athletes have issues with their mental health. And that's just something that's never been talked about before. But now the more professional athletes and collegiate athletes that are coming out and talking about it, it kind of gets rid of that stigma, right? That mental health is such a bad thing. Because it's not. I mean, you have that even in the Navy, we see mental health issues, right? With young sailors, older sailors, it doesn't matter, but you talk about it, you bring awareness to it, it helps, right? It certainly helps. And then you can get the resources that you need to combat whatever issues that you may have. So as far as talking about it, I haven't seen much of it in my early stages. Now it's becoming a lot more prevalent. I'm very happy with that, especially the alliance that you, Virginia Sports Hall of Fame and CHKD formed. I think it's an excellent thing. It's absolutely awesome. And I'd love to be a part of it. It's great. Some challenges that I still see that we face, though, is I think these young athletes, they have this pressure to perform still, that we can't, like parents, coaches, everybody, just the high cost of sports nowadays. You feel the need to have to send your kids to private lessons and get private instructors, and they have to do travel ball here, travel ball there. So they're constantly on the go, and they create this identity that I'm just a baseball player, or I'm just a football player, or I'm just a soccer player, and that's all there is. So then an injury that happens, or the player just loses love for the game, doesn't want to play anymore, or just isn't good enough to continue on in their playing career, now they're lost, right? So I think as parents, coaches, we have to look at these young athletes and realize that, guess what? They're still young. They're still developing, and kind of relieve some of these pressures that they see that lead to different burnouts and eating disorders and depression, right, due to these failures. The biggest thing I see, because I hear it all the time, is if we miss a call as officials, and you'll have coaches talk to their players, hey, we would have won if it wasn't for the officials. The officials were getting paid by the other team, or the referees hate us, right? Oh, this is, and I think back in the day, the coaches felt like it was getting that dog eat dog mentality, like, hey, the world against us, let's go, right? But what it's really doing is it creates that fixed mindset for these kids, where they think, oh, if I lose, it's not my ability. It's not anything I did wrong. It's because of somebody else. So you're giving them excuses instead of teaching them growth mentality, which we want a growth mindset for these kids to make them better leaders, where, hey, we lost, right? Let's not worry about the loss. Let's take a look at this, and what can we do to get better? How can we turn every loss into a learning opportunity, right? That's what you want to look for as a coach, a parent, instead of just looking at the wins and losses and the results of the game. That's not what it's for. It's for their development, their physical development, emotional development, and social development.
There's a lot there that was in that answer, and we could go on and on and on and have this conversation for hours. But maybe we'll save that for the next time we do one of these conversations, because you gave some great insight, great perspective. But I think at the end of the day, it's about keeping sports fun, especially at the youth level. You have to make it so that the kids want to play, because you don't want to push them out, you don't want to burn them out, and you don't want to price them out. So we got to figure out ways to continue to make sports fun, and hopefully make it fun for the officials as well. So we don't have games being canceled because we can't find qualified referees and officials. And so, Michael, we want to thank you for just taking some time to join us today and provide that very insightful perspective from the official side. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Well, I appreciate it. And if I may add, anyone willing to Want to come out and join the officiating ranks? We're actually doing our recruiting drive for the SEFOA, the Southeastern Football Officials Association. So just go to www.sefoa.net, register, sign up, and then I'll see you in my class in May.
Perfect. That is such a valuable component to the youth sports ecosystem is the officials and referees. And so thank you so much for plugging that. Well, parts of this conversation, as always, will be featured as part of our hashtag Sports Mental Health Monday campaign throughout the year. We'll be sharing content and information featuring our Alliance partners. Posts can be found on the Hall of Fame social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, as well as the Hall's website, www.vasportshof.com. Once again, I am Will Driscoll from the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and on behalf of the Youth Sports Mental Health and Wellness Alliance, thank you for following along, and be on the lookout for more sports and mental health conversations.